My name is Chris Orwell, and I'm the director of the New Mexico Museum of Space History in Alamogordo, New Mexico. Why don't you come join me for a tour? The museum started in 1976 as the International Space Hall of Fame. So it actually didn't start as a museum, although there were museum elements to it, but it started as a way to honor those who had worked in the space program, and it was kind of an economic development idea. So that's how it started. In the 1980s, it morphed into a museum. It was called the Space Center, and then changed its name in the year 2000 to the New Mexico Museum of Space History. But what we do here is we tell the story of international space history, but we always come back to that nugget that is New Mexico and this region. So that's always a part of it, but we really tell the whole story, the big thing. Whether it's the Russians, whether it's India, whether it's Europe, whether it's the US, we tell all of those stories. The first picture taken of Earth from space happened right out here. The first living creatures launched into space happened right out here. So many of the first launch of the Apollo program happened right out here. And we highlight all those things. One of those rockets that was the first Apollo rocket is actually out in front of the museum. And heck, nowadays, you know, the shuttle has landed out here. Now we got Boeing and the Starliner spacecraft landing out here. Spaceport America, it's always happening here, so there's always a New Mexico connection in some way, shape, or form with not only the history, but actually current operations in spaceflight. It's just fun to watch people come into the museum. It's fun to watch them interact with the objects that we have on display, or the interactives, you know, when they get in there and they land the space shuttle, or they land on the surface of the moon, or they fly around Mars, or they see themselves in infrared and ultraviolet light. Those are the things that's fun to watch. Strangely enough, one of the things I find the most humorous and most fun is hearing people look at the bathrooms, and when they see our bathrooms and how they're decorated, and they're like, "George, you gotta come look at this!" You know, that's just absolutely a blast for me. I wasn't brought up in museums, as it were. I was actually a Navy submariner, and I did that for 20 plus years for the Navy. Got out in 2006, retiring, planned a trip for my family to a museum up in Kansas, the Kansas Cosmosphere and Space Center, and strangely enough, ended up running the museum. They were looking for a new president and CEO. I submitted my resume, I ended up running the museum. Did that for 5.5 years, and then one of the astronauts recommended I take a look at the museum down here, which had a blank slate. The exhibits hadn't been updated in a while, and so I did, applied, got accepted by the Secretary of Cultural Affairs and the Governor, and I've been running the museum since 2012 and loving every minute of it. Probably one of the most popular right now is the sci-fi sci-fact exhibit, because everybody, it seems, has some connection to that realm. And then through the science fiction elements of it, they can connect to the science fact part of it and the space story. So whether it's standing in the transporter, seeing the Tribble from Star Trek, or a spacesuit from a TV show or movie that they love, you know, those are things where they can make a visceral connection to the story we're trying to tell them. We also have a V2 rocket that was launched at White Sands Missile Range. We have an F1 engine from the Saturn V rocket. We've got a number of drones and missiles that have been launched out at Holloman Air Force Base and White Sands Missile Range. The biggest object out there, the most visible one, is very obviously the Little Joe 2 rocket. And that was the first launch of the Apollo program, and it tested the escape system. And that was done right out here. It's always been an absolute blast for me to work here, and I want people to come here and enjoy it. A lot of people don't know about us because we're in a small community, 32,000 people in a county bigger than Connecticut, 60,000 people in the county. Nearest metropolis is an hour, 45 minutes away. We're a destination museum, so I would just love to see even more people find out about us, come here, enjoy the exhibits, enjoy the interactives, and spend some time here in this community where there's great hiking and there's skiing and there's all these other things to do that people might not think about. So yeah, we're happy to be a part of the community here in Alamogordo and in the Tularosa Basin, southern New Mexico, and it's just West Texas, just a little bit down the road here. Come on in.